does it mean to be a consumer? It often feels that this is an interchangeable term, another way of saying the public in terms of the economy. We are not humans but consumers, not individuals but consumers, buyers of things, fodder for the capitalist machine. Wikipedia, that great bastion of absolute truth, defines a consumer as a person or a group who intends to order, orders or uses purchased goods, products or services, primarily for personal, social, family, household and similar needs. It then goes on to quote President John F. Kennedy, who said, "Consumers, by definition, include us all." It's true, we must consume, we must nourish ourselves, we must fuel our cells and muscles so that we can live. And if we're to continue up Maslow's pyramid, we must also be consumers of those material things that keep us safe, keep us dry and keep us warm. We consume the attention of those most important to us to satisfy our need for love and approval. And there are our other material needs that make us feel validated, that reinforce a sense of status, self-esteem and worth. But in this capitalist consumerist world, it's very easy for our identities, our very sense of self, to be attached to that which we consume. The bigger cars, bigger houses, the fine dining in restaurants, the newest sneakers, it all suggests that we are somehow better, more important, or more worthy. The news and information that we consume aligns us with ideological tribes which give us a sense of belonging, whether that's real or healthy or not. But just as we consume food to sate hunger, what emptiness is it that we're trying to fill with our rampant consumption of other things? And why do we seem to get hungrier the more we devour? This is Conversations on Living, a podcast about how to be well, do well and live well. I'm Chris Brock and I'll be your waiter tonight at the all-you-can-eat buffet of tasty treats that are sure to make you feel happy and fulfilled if only you can eat enough of them. Only the food never runs out and your hunger is never quite satisfied, so whatever happens, don't stop eating, not even for a minute. Back in episode 57, I spoke to meditation expert Tom Cronin, who suggested the idea that we consume because we believe there is a hole inside of us, a sense of lack that needs to be filled. Only when it is full can we be happy, content, and realise our potential. But the truth, and the reason we can't stop consuming, is that there is no hole. We already have everything we need to be happy, content, and fulfilled, and when we realise that, when we start to actualise ourselves and the inner abundance that is already within us, we will no longer be attached to all those things, that diet of food, information, ideas, emotional need, material excess, whatever, because we will no longer find ourselves lacking. We will no longer need to consume. We will no longer be consumers. So if we're not consumers, what are we? In this episode, I speak with Charles Clay. Charles is an empowerment coach and author, and through his own story of a devastating back injury and his self-driven recovery, he went on to develop a practice he calls the laser focus method. This helps individuals actualize their own potential, and as part of this, he encourages a shift from a consumer mindset to a producer mindset. And as producers, rather than being subject to the world we live in, we become fully realized creators, ready to give back to and shape the world, rather than simply consuming and being shaped by it. You can find out about Charles at his website, which is www.charlesclay.coach, and he's also on Instagram, where his handle is @charlesclay.coach. Before we get started, just a quick shout out to the guys at Headliner. Headliner is the service that I use to create those audiograms. You've probably seen them. They're like images, short clips of audio and or video with waveforms or subtitles. And people use them to market their podcasts. I do. I use them on Instagram, Facebook, other places on social media. And if you host a podcast, Headliner is certainly the easiest and most powerful way to create them. So definitely check it out. They're at www.headliner.app. And also a quick word about Plane. Plane is a video game created by last week's guest on the show, Krish Srikumar. In the game, you are challenged to grow a beautiful island using the power of mindfulness. And through the game, you can experience deep relaxation and learn straightforward meditations that can help you care for your mental well-being, your mental health, and be more present. I've never seen anything like it. And if you want to give meditation a go, but you don't know where to start, and you also enjoy video games, then this might be just what you need. So check it out at www.plane.co. That's Playne. And finally, just a request from me. Give this podcast a rating, review it, and subscribe. And also tell the world, because it all helps to spread the love. You can find it, obviously, wherever you get your podcasts, but also at conversationsonliving.com, where you can also find more episodes, and also you can find out about me, my writing, my meditations, and other projects. And while you're there, sign up for the 21-day gratitude challenge. It's completely free, or you can also sign up for my very infrequent newsletter, and in return, you'll get a lovely free gift as a thanks for your efforts. And don't forget, you can also continue the conversation in our Facebook group. Just search for Conversations on Living. Anyway, enough about that. Now it's time to get into my conversation with the contagiously enthusiastic Charles Clay. I really think you're going to enjoy this one, so have a listen. So Charles, thank you for giving up your time today to have a quick chat about kind of what you do, your background, your story. You're you kind of call yourself an inner peace coach and healer. And if there's anything I think people need these days, it is that kind of inner peace, because, Byron Katie, I don't know if you know her writing.
Oh, yeah.
She talks about how we're often fighting with reality, but it's only when we get comfortable with reality that we can kind of find our peace and stop fighting. So, I mean, it'd be great to get a little bit of your story. I mean, it's quite an unconventional one that has, some ups and downs and a lot of kind of self-discovery in it. So tell me where this came from. How did your journey begin?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. First, it's a pleasure and honor to get to drop in with you and share in this way. And, my interest has always been in the greatest technology on the planet. And it's not these computers, it's not these smartphones, it's these human bodies, these sensory suits that we get to enjoy for such a short time. And so, I pursued that interest with my degree in kinesiology and minor in health and wellness from Washington State University, and then graduated from there and moved to California to live the beach life and help people with health and fitness, and became a trainer and a health coach, and really enjoyed that chapter of life. And then I found myself on Mammoth Mountain with two other friends one day. And this is back in 2008. And it was a full-on blizzard. I mean, this day was really different than any other, because they'd closed down the lifts because it was so dangerous up there, but we were already at the top. And so I looked at my friends, you could barely see 10 feet in front of you, a blur of a tree or whatnot. And so I just said, let's stay low and be ready for anything. And we just charged the mountain, and we're having a blast. They were in front of me, and about halfway down the mountain, all of a sudden I took a jump that I didn't know was there. And I freaked out in midair. I was tightening up, clenching. I didn't know which way was up or down. So when I impacted the ground, it felt like this lightning bolt just hit me in the low back. And it was the most excruciating physical pain I'd experienced to that point. And I'm yelling to my friends, hoping I can catch their attention. They're already down the mountain. I look at my phone. It's dead. There's no juice left in that. And I'm looking around. I don't see anyone up here. And I'm at like a level 11 on a 10 scale of pain. And it's in those moments, I just had to channel my inner Spartan warrior and really, click my heels out of my, board and just sit on it to slide down as far as I could. And then I'd keel over and take some breaths into the pain. And eventually I made it down the mountain and went to go see these doctors that came highly recommended. And they showed me x-rays and MRIs of how jacked up my spine was and the damage I did. And they were telling me that I might never move the same again if I didn't get surgery as soon as possible. And so for someone that loves the human body so much, that was probably the worst news I could have gotten. And so I was in a fight or flight, response. And even in that, I was able to really access my intuition and choose an alternative way. And I just decided, I'm not going to give my power over to these doctors. Are probably great at what they do, but that's not my path. And I chose the path of self-healing. And that led me down a wild ride of actually having to feel all the emotions that I was trying to avoid previous. And that meant like sitting in my own shame. I could barely get up. Could barely crawl to the bathroom, let alone get to work and be productive. And fear, if I'd ever move the same again. Some grief from loss that I hadn't fully processed. And so I just sat in my own pool of emotional tears, and that release was actually super liberating and allowed me to have some clarity. Finally, I realized like, wow, I've been stuffing these emotions with sex, drugs, rock and roll, seeking pleasure, anything to not feel this. And by actually feeling it, there were some gems there for me, some lessons and blessings. And one of those was clarity. And so I sat in meditation with the intention of gaining answers to healing myself naturally, and just set that intention and dropped into meditation. And during that meditation, a friend I hadn't talked to in over 2 years texted me and said, I heard your back's pretty messed up. Check out neurokinetic therapy. And this is NKT, the work of David Weinstock. And so this took me down this rabbit hole of, what is this? This is like, the more I started researching it, it was connecting so many dots for me, how everything's all interconnected. And, with my background in kinesiology, it made sense. And so it wasn't long before I got my first session with one of his top students named Christina in San Diego. And boy, I walked in there looking like a mess. My upper body's over to the right, my hips over to the left. I look like Shakira, like stuck in a mid-hip dance move. And that was representative of how out of alignment I was with my purpose at that time. Teaching health and wellness during the week, and then going out on the weekends and overindulging and all the things. And so she got me on the table, and I was blown away by what happened next. She tested some muscle groups, including my glutes, and just a simple muscle test for the butt muscles, and nothing was firing. Like, she'd have me push down with my foot, nothing was activating there. And I was like, what do you mean my glutes aren't firing? She said, yep, all form, no function. And so she had me clench my jaw and retested the glutes, and all of a sudden they were strong for that moment. And so my body had just told us that there was a neurological traffic jam right here, and these muscles were compensating for the big guns. And so I wasn't able to stabilize my spine well. And so we did a couple other tune-ups like that, found some other groups. She released my jaw, super painful, but also, very liberating, because it opened up this channel and allowed those big muscles to fire again. And so I got off the table and was like, I feel 90% better. In one session, I was blown away and had this epiphany, and gave her a big hug, told her I'd see her every week, and I wanted to learn this, and that this is my path, and I want to help others with this too. And so I ended up studying under David Weinstock and took all of his courses and became a neurokinetic therapist. And that began my healing practice, and really elevated the level of personal training and health coaching that I was doing at that time. And so I went on to get to help others with their aches, pains, past injuries that kept showing up, and help a lot of people prevent them from getting surgery as well, and healing naturally. And so that was the beginning of that journey. And then through that, I've noticed so many common denominators that a lot of people are dealing with. There's oftentimes interwoven emotional elements to pain. There's often some metaphysical aspects to pain that it's important that we understand the lessons and the blessings as to how it's happening for us and through us, instead of, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me, like I was on that mountain. But then looking back, I'm like, that was one of the greatest things that happened to me to help crack me open and reveal these gifts. And so that helped change my perspective about challenges in general. Looking back at all this evidence of like, wow, it was actually the challenges that helped shape who I am and revealed a lot of these amazing gifts and lessons and blessings. And so I don't fear challenge as much anymore. And I improved my relationship with pain through that journey as well, and recognize that pain is more of a, it's energy, it's information trying to show us something, trying to tell us something. And the level of intensity is like how important it is to make a change, and so I can look at it like just like your car. If you get a check engine light in your car, how long do you drive before you make a change and get it serviced? Most people are pretty good about that with their car. But when it comes to our bodies, a lot of times we just take the quick pill, just try to avoid it, try to cover up that check engine light with whatever we can, escape it with Netflix, scroll holes on social media, anything to get away from it. And then we're missing out on those lessons and blessings and what that check engine light's actually trying to prevent us from a major breakdown. And so that really, put me on this great trajectory of evolution and just this fascination with the body's ability to heal itself. And so I'm fortunate now I get to help remind others that they're their own greatest healer and that we're empowered to heal ourselves. And there's some really powerful tools for allowing that to happen.
I had a conversation. I did a podcast with a guy called Jason Garner many episodes ago, and he was a big cheese in the kind of global music industry. And then he realized that he was deeply unhappy. But he said something very profound to me, and that is that life is talking to us all the time, and it's getting louder and louder and louder, and it will keep getting louder until we pay attention. And if we don't pay attention, it's going to slap us in the face, and it could be an illness, it could be an emotional issue, or it could be you talked early on about how your kind of values were out of alignment with your actions. You were living this kind of well-being life during the week, but then you were hitting it hard at the weekend, and that was kind of causing a conflict within you.
Yep.
How much of what you're talking about is about getting ourselves physically healthy, and how much is there about kind of the emotional health, the way we turn up every day, the way we, the work we do, the jobs we do? How much of it is about getting ourselves physically healthy, and how much of it is about aligning our greater life with who we're supposed to be?
It's a great question. And they're so intertwined. It's like one way to looking at it is the further we get from our like soul's purpose in this human experience, the further we get from that. And I believe it has to do with sharing our gifts, what's on our heart, our mission, our message. The further we get from that and try to avoid that, the more painful it gets. We get more of those, slaps in the face by the universe. And then, usually it'll come as like a little feather first. It'll be like, hey, you might want to make an adjustment here, and realign with integrity. And if we don't listen to that, then it's like getting hit with a big slap from the universe. For me, that was like a nasty hangover and dealing with some consequences with Charles 1.0 behaviors. And then eventually, that was enough to catalyze, okay, I need to make some changes here. But then I fell back on old patterns. It was like I made some progress, and then I'm sure a lot of people can relate. It was like 2 steps backwards. And then eventually it was I feel like I got hit by a Mack truck, which was the injury that happened on the mountain for me. And so now I like paying attention to the feathers. It's such an easier way. And it's all happening for us, meaning that it's all like, I look at it like bumpers on a bowling alley, right? You got like pleasure and you got pain. Right. And so you're just bouncing off these two to help you stay in alignment with your mission, your purpose here. And that evolves and changes for people throughout their life. But ultimately, what's great is that when you start taking steps in the direction of that purpose and that passion, that your skills, your way of being of service, then you can use your internal emotions as an internal compass. And so it's like you begin feeling more joy, more excitement. You get to help others in ways that lead to this path of long-term fulfillment, which is much different than choosing, just the quick fix, grabbing the cookie, the sugar, the alcohol, the smoking, whatever, some people it's doing. Just like, their strategy of avoidance is just got to stay busy. As long as I'm productive, then I don't have to look at this uncomfortable feeling. Right. And so something really miraculous happened in my life after that accident, when I realized that I had not gone to the depths of those heavy emotions before. And when I did, they passed. It was like, and under that was these golden nuggets, this deeper understanding of myself. And so I was like, what was I so afraid of going into the depths of grief, of shame, of guilt, right? And these are these lower vibrational frequencies that it's interesting, because that which we resist just persists. And so when we're choosing the short-term gratification or band-aids or whatever to just get through, it's like keeping that stuck as issues in our tissues. And so that can show up eventually as pain, the check engine light. And so what's interesting is the opposite of that is when we really go in and take a look at it and understand it, then it dissolves. And this too will pass, right? And then it reveals something new that we can discover about ourselves. So this encouraged me to, back then it was like Charles 1.0 was like, I'm always happy, always good, Captain Positivity, right? And I was totally spiritually bypassing a lot of these heavy emotions, which served me to a degree, but I was kind of stuck in this capacity of like, I'd only willing to go this low into the heavy emotions. So I'd only feel like this glass ceiling of joy, pleasure, and so on. And as I went deeper and had the courage to go to the depths in those heavier emotions and discover more things that had the equivalent and even higher amounts of bliss, joy, pleasure in my life. And so it's always worth feeling it and healing it instead of avoiding it. And
I guess people.
So I basically made a commitment to myself to allow myself to feel more instead of always trying to feel better. And, I had tons of biohacks to feeling better, like from breath work to, using different nutrients and all kinds of nootropics and biohacking cool stuff. But it was all kind of like a temporary spike. And then I'd be still stuck in that capacity emotionally. And so allowing myself to feel more really opened up a new level in life for me, and helped me tap into all these emotions are wanting to happen through us. And so that which we resist just ends up getting stuck, and it's like carrying more weight on us, and it becomes issues in your tissues, I call it. And it can be very uncomfortable over time. And so before choosing you can witness, oh yeah, this feels uncomfortable. My mind's providing all these band-aids, drinking, smoking, go for a run, anything to get away from it. But there's another alternative, and that's to just really sit with it and to really notice what's there with an intention of learning and discovering more about yourself and what are the lessons and blessings to learn from this. And then as we do, it dissolves and it finally moves through us. And then there's, another level in the game per se.
I mean, I suppose some people would call that shadow work, I guess. It's about facing all the things we're scared to face. And you talked earlier about how the pain is a kind of signpost. But you also talked about kind of bouncing between pain and joy. And that's the kind of the route you travel. But I mean, isn't it more about turning into pain? And that's where you kind of conquer it. It's like, it's almost like saying to Freddy Krueger when he pops up in your dreams, I don't believe in you. I'm stronger than you. And then he sort of crumbles away.
Right.
I mean, is that why are we so scared to do that? What is so frightening about this
Yeah,
stuff that we don't want
I
to face it?
I think as human beings, we have a fear of what we don't understand. And so, and then we're passed down a lot of strategies from whether our parents or who we see of ways of coping, and so there's depths that we've never gone to before, and that scares the crap out of the ego, because the ego, the mind, is like all about survival. And even if it's super painful, but we've been through it before, so we know we can survive that pattern, then it'll take us back there. But our souls come here for much more than just survival. We're here to thrive and expand and experience the full spectrum of emotions, I believe. And so to try to resist or push away certain ones is it's really depriving yourself of some of those lessons and blessings and golden nuggets that you can discover about yourself.
Is there a sense that when we turn inwards, and we kind of the aim of this conversation, I guess, ultimately is to talk about moving from being consumers to creators. But when we turn into the void, if you like, Nietzsche called it the void. If you stare for too long into the void stares back into you. Sure. And but actually, that doesn't necessarily have to be a terrifying thing. That can be a deeply rewarding thing. But when we're consumers and we're looking for this kind of external fix, whether that's from partying, whether it's from, like you say, becoming addicted to running or something like that, it's coming from a sense of lack. It's like there's an emptiness that needs to be filled with this alcohol, this food, this whatever it is I'm about to consume. But when we look inwards and we see that actually there's a lot here going on. I think Carl Jung said, beneath the threshold of consciousness, everything was thriving with life. And inside we're thriving with life. And there's these kind of dark things that need dealing with, these fears that need addressing. But there's also a lot of joy and appreciation for the world and for our own existence. And there isn't a lack. We're already full. We can be happy without needing all of this other stuff. We can be complete. Right. So where do we go from there when we realize that we have everything we need to exist and to thrive? You talked about being of service before. How does that work in relation to our own well-being?
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what you're sharing, we've just been taught that that's not true, that we need all these external things to fix us, to make us happy, so we've just been a society that's been a bit brainwashed by marketing and the need for external things, forgetting that all of that is within us already and that we can access that by going inward. And I have an entire process for that. I call the inner peace process, that helps connect those dots between the emotions that are coming up to where they show up in the body. And the first time we experience that, then there's usually a story, a younger version of us that was going through something. It was really challenging, and there were some decisions made about ourselves and some beliefs that were created that might not be serving us now or might not be true, but they'll still show up in our experience until we go back to resolve those parts of us. And it's a beautiful reparenting process that allows us, you can literally witness as this energy finally metabolizes in your system. And it's really beautiful to be guided through. And then I offer a take-home version of that that's super profound. And that way, every time you experience something uncomfortable or someone triggers you, you can choose the endless band-aids that the mind offers to just avoid it temporarily, or you can take it through the step-by-step process and discover the source of it and how it's happening for you, gain those lessons and blessings, and then let it move through you so you can, discover what's on the other side of fear and the other side of these heavy emotions that want to move through us. And so along that journey is also getting super clear on what it is you want, like what is your North Star? So a lot of people, I'd say over half the population just are so into Netflix and consuming and there's like a war for our attention these days. And our, as you know, where our attention goes, our energy flows. And so we're giving our energy to, all these distractions, and forgetting about what's actually worthy of our attention and our energy. And I believe that what's worthy of that is our heart's desires, like what we really want to experience in this life. And so, real quick to talk about fears, whenever we go to step into doing something great, for you starting this podcast, right? Your first one, I'm sure you moved through some fears, right? Of judgment. Oh my gosh, are they going to receive this well? Am I going to be rejected? How am I going to get this? All these things, these little fears. And I have those too, whenever I would get on stage or, give a presentation, like all that stuff comes up, and it's enough sometimes to abort mission. And if that fear, you let that fear win, then it's like keeps you back in your survival hole that the ego likes, but it becomes very painful because then you're not sharing those gifts, and they can literally eat us up from the inside out. And so by stepping into moving through that fear, I've recognized that I have a much bigger fear above all these rejection. Will I be judged? Will I be liked? Will I be exiled? All those are minor fears compared to my biggest fear, which is deathbed regrets. Eventually I've been so close to death in my life, just witnessing that experience so much with my loved ones, that like, I know someday on my deathbed, I want to make sure that I can say I did it all. Like I shared everything on my heart. I created all the ideas in my mind and got to help as many people as I could, and really lived this life fully, because I only get this sensory suit once. And so that scares the crap out of me. And so that really that fear is actually productive for me, because it supersedes all these small ones and helps me move through the perfectionist, the judgment, all that stuff is pretty minor compared to when I glimpse ahead on my deathbed, did I do it all? And so that's really helped kind of ignite the fire to sharing some really potent, my best ideas, and get to take steps into creating more. And in doing that, I discovered, there's this land of next level joy, fulfillment, passion, when we step into that creator consciousness. It is like, and it might be just playing the guitar. It might be, creating a photo album, or, creating an experience for some of your loved ones. It can start with super simple things, but you're on the right path because it feels really good in your body. And that's where your emotions can become that internal compass, that you're on the right path. You're following your highest excitement, following your highest joy. And so that gets really exciting, because once you build momentum in that regard, then you just want to keep creating. You can become like an apple tree. An apple tree in nature, it's a great teacher. It's like, it doesn't worry about if you think my apples are sour, or if that person thinks they're great. It just produces apples. So when we train our brains to continue to step into creator consciousness and just create, to get into that flow state, that timelessness, that experience of, the flow state it's so beautiful. And creating from there it's like magic, it gets really exciting. And so that is the alternative to that, is to continue seeking externally and consuming. And for a lot of people right now, it's information overload of consumption, right? It's like everyone's looking on Google for their answers. They're, forgetting that even that's controlled information, right? And filtered based on what they want you to see. And so really there's a way to tap into your cosmic Google and access those answers from within yourself, and then take that from that receptivity, calming the nervous system. There's great breath work tools I teach for this. From that space, your natural space of inner peace, all of a sudden ideas come. All of a sudden, new inspirations, like, oh, that's the next step I need to take for this project, right? And then that's when you want to take the masculine inspired action. That's not the time to like sit in meditation for another 2 hours, right? Because you just got the download, go do that thing. And then the next step will reveal itself, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, you're stepping into that creator consciousness, and you know, because it feels really good. And then you get to witness, those that do resonate with what you're sharing, how it impacts their lives. And that's where you really tap into that, just deep level of long-term fulfillment. It's so much richer than any measure of money in your bank account. It's so much richer than any short-term fix solution that you can get externally. And so I was literally inspired the beginning of this pandemic in 2020 to create the laser focus method, because it's a method that has helped me step into that creator consciousness, to be so much more productive by training my mind to cut through the distractions like a ninja, and gamify my get-to-do list instead of this huge to-do list. And then each time I crush it, I get a healthy celebration. And that can be tapping into my natural pharmacy within myself, these feel-good hormones that are always available to us, those neurotransmitters, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. We can get that activated through dancing, so knowing that our human brain gets about 45 minutes, some maybe an hour of like clear focused attention before we start losing our level and quality of focus, then set the timer and crush that get to do list item, and then celebrate your win with a quick, dance or a bike ride. Or I love bike rides. It's a great healthy celebration because it's this feeling of freedom. I can go as fast as I like. I can jump through nature, and it's this feeling of nostalgia that like appeases my inner child as well. In the old biker gangs I used to start when I was young, so that's like my healthy reward after accomplishing some of these tasks that really move the needle forward on what I'm creating. And so that's a way to reinforce this consistent creator consciousness. And then you're tapping into your natural pharmacy. And what you find on that path is that now there's not the same magnetism to the things that you were addicted to externally. It was the first thing I discovered as I was practicing this method, is like, I don't have the same need to, go out for a drink to celebrate, or go have a smoke on my break. It's like, no, I'd rather tap into my natural pharmacy and put on my favorite song and do a 2-minute dance, and then refocus for the next task. Cause now I'm building massive momentum. And what happens is the level of productivity is so much more. It's super focused and dialed in, that now you get to experience more free time. So instead of this like scarcity of time concept, it's like, wow, I just crushed the 2 biggest things on my get to do list. And now I have free time to enjoy doing more of the things that I love, to be fully present with my family, my little daughter, so that I can anchor in those memories in vivid HD by being fully present, so we can cherish those memories forever. And then usually when you're doing the things you love, that's when you're open and receptive for more of the amazing ideas to come in, right? So it's just like this really positive cycle that you can use for you. And that's why I created the laser focus method and took an amazing group of people through the first edition. And now I have it up online for those that need some inspiration and really want to dial in their vision. I call it visioneering. You learn it in this process as well, which is getting super clear on what it is you want to experience. And it could be 6 months from now, a year from now, but allowing the experience of that in real time. And every time you do that, you're visioneering, getting super clear on the details of it. What's fun is you go about your day and notice how the puzzle pieces start falling into place for you. Setting your intention is really key for creating your life by design instead of by default. And so it gets really fun on that path, because all of a sudden you start noticing more signs and opportunities and people showing up, that the puzzle pieces to help that vision come to fruition. And so it's allowed for a lot of dreams to come true. And that's really exciting.
Is it a sense of, we're here, we are every day, we have to go to work, we've got bills to pay, we have our duties and obligations to, our employer, our families, our debts, the bill, everything we've got to do. We're being bombarded by information constantly. We're eating all this awful food that we're kind of hooked on. We're drinking our booze. And all of these things are piling in on top of our kind of intrinsic, essential self that is buried in there somewhere. And so what we're trying to do is reconnect, rebuild that relationship with who we really are underneath all of this.
Yep.
And the stronger that relationship gets, the more of this junk that we've collected, we get rid of. And so the kind of real us starts to kind of come through all of this, much more connected to the world, much more connected with who we are, where we're supposed to be going, who we came here to be, if you like. And this method you've developed is about kind of really cutting through all of this junk and this kind of excess baggage that we carry around with us every day.
Yes, absolutely.
When you talk about your get to do list, or the stuff I get to do every day, are we talking about the kind of stuff that we kind of don't want to do, but we kind of have to, like, our work to do list, just becoming like a powerhouse to just deal with that stuff? It might be the stuff that we kind of procrastinate about. It might be the stuff that we put off, but it's about owning that, dealing with that stuff so that we get to have a better quality of life somewhere else.
Absolutely. And great question, because just that simple reframe in our languaging alone because if you think about, how's your relationship with to-do lists? It just seems to get bigger and bigger. And even just thinking about it can create this like brain fog, overwhelm, anxiety, right? So that's not working very well for most people. So instead, it's like you take two things from that would really move the needle forward, that would really make you feel productive. And you turn those into your get to do list, because even if they're things that you don't feel like they're going to be fun, or, things that you kind of dread, you still get to do them because you're choosing that. And what you can do is even look at the feelings and invite those in of what it'll feel like to accomplish that. And so then it's easier to get into your flow state while you set your timer. Cool, I can crush this in 30 minutes, this chunk of it. And then you remember the level of focus you had in like high school and college when it was like a big midterm exam, right? Like people had some serious focus then. There was a lot of pressure and stuff, but for 1 hour, like there's no distractions. You're not looking at your phone. It's like, so you take that concept that is possible and then gamify it. Make it more fun so that, at the end of this task, I get to enjoy some movement in my body, or an Epsom salt bath, or, a meditation, or play some music, some sort of intrinsic reward that's rewiring the brain and creating these new neural pathways that then get reinforced every time you have that healthy celebration. And so then it's like, yes, I get to do these things on my list, and it's going to feel amazing when I finish these off. And I often like to do the toughest one first. First thing in the day, you get into alignment and you tackle that, the one that you want to avoid the most. As soon as you get that done, then the other ones seem really easy. You're like, man, what else can I add to this get to do list? It's only noon and I'm crushing it.
How do you get that energy going first thing in the day? Because if you're going to the office every day, and you've been going to the office for 20 years, and you go into your cubicle every day and you do the same thing, and you're like, oh God, another day, it's Monday morning. How do you turn that around so that when you get to your desk, you're like, right, I'm going to crush those two things. I've got the energy. How do you, especially when you're doing this for the first day, you haven't started the laser focus course yet, you're turning up on your first day. How do you get that momentum going to say, right, I'm going to give this a go?
It's a great question. And I've been turning Mondays into Fridays since 1999. If it ends in day, then you get the opportunity to make the most of it. And a couple things, it's a morning ritual. And what used to be like an hour, and I literally, had a whole team that I'd guide through these good morning rituals. And it's a lot of fun. It involves movement, breath work, and meditation. And so it allows you to release some of the resistance, that stuck energy, and then come into a nice, calm, focused state that it makes it easy to really access that flow state with your tasks. And then these tasks that you used to avoid or that you hated doing before, you dread, is actually an opportunity to reach that timeless state between discipline and surrender, where you just feel like you get into the zone, even through those mundane tasks, and you find ways to make it fun. Then it's more sustainable. And so to access that state, it's a combination I use. It used to take an hour. Now that I'm a father, I have it condensed into like a Jedi 5-10 minute routine. I can relate to that. And I teach it to my clients. I use some really powerful breath work for tuning into the wisdom and intelligence in our body and clearing out any stuck energy. And that can be in the energy centers. And there's a breath technique for each one. And it gets really exciting because once you clear away the internal blocks, then there's not as much procrastination. Turns into excitement for what you're creating. And you get super clear on the vision, the big vision of where you're going, that North Star. And that can be enough to inspire you to access that flow state during the tasks. And so it's a great question. Breath work, meditation, and movement has been my formula. And there's really specific ones that I offered that through the whole pandemic as well. It was a fun free offering that I really enjoyed. And so I have a ton of recordings of those and good morning rituals.
Is there, we talked very early on in the conversation about how our kind of mind, our body, and our spirit are all interconnected. So if you have an emotional problem or you have kind of baggage you're carrying with you, it can manifest in physical ways. Do we need to pay attention to things like how much sleep we're getting, how much, in order to really kind of live this much more focused life where we're uncovering who we really are, we're dealing with our get to do list, we're kind of just being much more connected with the things that are important to us on a essential level, deep down in who we are. Do we need to kind of really focus on our physical well-being, getting the sleep, getting the water, nourishing ourselves properly, not eating the junk food, not consuming the news media or the crappy TV soap operas, whatever it is. When you talk about going from consumer to creator, do we need to be much more mindful about what we're consuming, both physically, both in terms of how much sleep we're getting, how much water we're drinking, and just kind of take ownership of that a little bit in order to have a much more healthy life?
Absolutely. And those are all factors, right? In our energetics, the amount of energy that we can generate and put into whatever it is that interests us. And so if we're not taking care of those things, I look at it as like each one's a bucket. You got your health, your business, your relationships, and then there's a ton of others, right? That when we're putting so much into just one, like someone's going all in on their business, and then all of a sudden they're getting a belly and their bucket of, each bucket has a plant, a vibrant plant. And if we're not watering each bucket, then the plant starts withering and dying. And so, it's a fun balance game, making sure, yes, I'm getting all these buckets are getting the attention, the water that they need. And you can do an assessment on that, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you need to check in with each of those buckets and those plants to make sure that they're all thriving. And so because one always affects another, right? If you're dealing with if you're not getting good sleep, then you're more likely to crave sugar, and then your brain's in more brain fog, dealing with the effects of that. If you have any pain in your body, that's amplified because sugar is like gasoline on the on the fire of pain, and inflammation. So same thing if you're harboring anger that you just don't want to deal with. You're like, I've been taught by society it's not okay to express this anger energy that I'm experiencing. And so I'm just going to keep it pushed down and just keep working. Right. Well, guess how that comes out? It's like a volcano. It wants to move through you. And so oftentimes it comes out at the ones we love the most. Unfortunately, unconsciously, we'll be short with them, we'll be snappy, kind of rude, or impatient oftentimes. And those are kind of like the passive aggressive ways or we'll bark at, the ones we love. And that's a sign that there's something that needs to be addressed underlying that. And so we get to take responsibility for that. And, in my path, wow, I've had so much, such a relationship with anger. I feel like it's even worthy sharing the story really quick if you're open to it.
Yeah, of course.
Because this was pretty recently. This will give you a glimpse of my inner peace process and how this works. And not even 2 months ago, my entire Instagram account got hacked. And this is like, such a blow to my nervous system. I was like, wow, somebody just got my password, changed it, and then kicked me out of my own account. And this is, like 5 years of art, of my message, of sharing, and my business is wrapped up in it. And so this was a big hit to my nervous system. And I felt this strong, like, rage and anger of just like, this is like a parasite that I just wanted to crush, and so then what happens is right after, they're contacting me via WhatsApp. They got my number, they're calling and sending texts and threats that we're going to shut your account down. They're basically holding it ransom and they want money for it. And so, I could have answered the phone and spoke like Incredible Hulk. But instead, I chose to take my inner peace process first. And so first step, just notice what the emotion is. And it was, some strong anger and rage. And I noticed where it was showing up in my body. It was in my solar plexus, like this boa constrictor energy. And so then I tuned into, when's the first time I've experienced this? Because I'm familiar with this flavor of anger. And that took me back to, my body knows, it's so intelligent. It took me right back to what wanted to be healed the most. And it was my 16-year-old self that had something really important taken from me. And that was, I went to go look, we had my whole best friends, our whole basketball team was, we're a tight knit group, but the coaches had it out for me. And they, I was kind of a rule bender and a bit of a rebel. And so they really had this judgment towards me, and they cut me from the basketball team. And so I went to look at the roster and I'm not on it. And so I stormed into their office and said, it's got to be a mistake. I'm not on the list. And they couldn't even look me in the eyes. They were like, well, we had to make a tough decision and blah, 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 all this BS. And I knew they just had it out for me and wanted to use their power trip to take that from me. I remember just seeing red. I was so angry. I couldn't believe they had the ability to take that from me. Like my favorite sport, my comrades that, I was so excited junior year to play. And so I literally, like Incredible Hulk wearing green, I wanted to just take their whole desk and just throw it through the wall. That's what I wanted to do with that anger. I held that down and didn't express it in that way because that's not, in societal terms appropriate. And so, but interesting enough, it was like a light went off. Of course, I didn't fully process that anger. And so these emotions that we try to just avoid, there's no escaping it. And so that was my medicine. This hacker had actually helped me go back to that part of myself and get to be there as my current self, reparenting my 16-year-old and actually help him through that whole experience and give him the green light to let him know it's okay. Like, let's go hit the punching bag 100 times. Let's go. Okay, it's moved from the solar plexus to the throat. Great. Let's let out some Viking roars and just really release that, allow my body full permission to release that anger. And then I sat there and even had some tears with my 16-year-old and gave him a hug, metaphorically. And because there's usually sadness under anger, and they're close cousins. And so once he felt that he was supported, more so than my parents could have at that time, then he felt like he was in a good place, integrated in my heart again. Then I'm in this neutral space. Then I feel super clear, and I could care less the outcome. At that point, I was like, cool, they can have my account. They say they're going to put like porn on it and all this stuff, like whatever, like I'm okay with any outcome now. And now I'm ready to deal with these guys. Right. And so I answered the phone and I said, listen, how long have you been doing this scamming deal? And he talks like this. He was like, years, bro, years. And I said, well, how many people have you scammed in this many years? And he said, hundreds of people. And I said, do you believe in karma? And he sat there for a second. He said, yeah. And I go, good. Then you know that this is coming back to you in probably the worst way possible. And right now you have an opportunity to make things right. And you can give me my account back. We'll call it good, go our separate ways. And so now he's not this like parasite. Now he's human to human and leveling with him. And he begins to open up a little bit. And he's like, this is my job. I have kids that need food on the table. And I said, I can relate to that. I have a little girl, and I know that can be stressful sometimes. And do your kids know that you do this for a job? He said, no. I go, what are you going to do someday when they get old enough and you tell them that you're stealing from other people? How's that going to feel? And all of a sudden his whole demeanor changed. And I said, what is it you want? He said, I want $500. I said, you're not getting $500. I'll tell you what, if you agree to these three conditions, then I'll give you $100. If one, you make sure it goes towards your kids, feeding them. Two, you make sure to get rid of all the information you have on me and we part ways and never speak again. And three, you make sure that you find a real job, something that's of value, that you can sleep better at night and that you're proud to share with your kids. Deal? And he said, I need $300. And I said, no deal, and hung up on him. And meanwhile, I'm at the park with my family and, they're having a good time. So I just put the phone down and I'm having fun with them. And my wife knows what's going on. She's like, your account got hacked. That sucks. But so I'm dealing with that. And then after a little while, I answered the phone again and I said, all right, last chance, same deal stands. If you want to resolve this now, we can. And for $100. And he said, okay, I'll do it. But it has to be in crypto. And I said, all right. He said, you got to prove to me that you have crypto. And I'm like, sure. Showed some proof. And I said, okay, I've done my part. Now you send me the password and I'll wire the money. And he said, okay. He sends me the password. I get it really quick, change the password. Now I have my account back. And I ghosted him and just hung up. And so it was this really interesting. And I looked at my wife. I said, hey, I just got my account back, high fives. And so I let that whole experience, I'm like gaining all these lessons and blessings. And I knew I could just feel like through the phone, this guy he's just so pissed.
Yeah.
He's texting. He's like, I'm going to get your account back and put porn on there and cancel your account, all these things. And so I made sure to just let him marinate on that for a couple hours, and then I tuned in and recognized that this felt unresolved still. And I didn't want to leave any open loops. And so I made sure to enjoy time with my family and let him have his experience of what he's doing to other people. So he got his dose of karma and got to work through his anger, and hopefully that was his medicine. I certainly got mine. And then I picked up the phone and said, okay, I'm a man of my word. So I'm going to wire you the money as long as those 3 conditions still are on the table. Can you agree to that? And he said, yeah, man to man. Wired him the money, never spoke again, got my account back, and gained tons of lessons and blessings from it.
I mean, is this a metaphor in a way? I mean, I know this happened in real life, but is this a metaphor for, that slap in the face, turning into our pain and not letting the pain dictate what's going to happen here? There's all this shadow work we need to do. When we feel that feather tickling us that's getting stronger and stronger, it's like this guy hacking our account, and we're fuming, we're enraged, and he's got the upper hand. But when we face into it, when we say, no, I'm not going to let this pain win, and then we get this kind of, this pot of gold, if you like, we get our account back, and we get access to, this deeper healing. You've done this kind of reparenting of your 16-year-old.
Right.
There's always that pot of gold. And I've been avoiding using this quote because I end up using it in pretty much every conversation I have on this podcast. But there's Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And I'm sorry for any regular listeners, because I always come out with that. And it's like that, it's like when you turn into the fear, you realize that the fear is not that frightening at all. And it's in that moment that you gain the kind of strength to step into the cave and get the treasure.
Absolutely.
And whether that treasure is clarity, whether it's about realigning with who you are and living a much more fulfilled life, it's that courage. We talked about courage and empowerment before we started recording the conversation, but it's stepping into our kind of innate courage to be who we are, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what you're teaching with your work and with your clients.
Absolutely. And dealing with the emotions first, even if it's fear, taking a look at it, knowing that there is a pot of gold awaiting on the other side of that your soul knows about and is excited for, but the ego, the mind that wants to keep us safe and in survival mode. And so for me, it was an opportunity over time to develop a better relationship with anger. And so everything is relationships, how we relate to one another, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to the voices in our mind that are fearful or protective. And all of those serve a purpose. And so when we understand that, then even the biggest, fear voice in our head, if we befriend that instead of trying to push it away, as it's like a family member, right? And so as you befriend that, then and improve that relationship and recognize them for that part of you for what its purpose is, to try to keep you safe, right? Prevent you from dying or doing something, terrible in this physical body and realm, then those parts feel seen and accepted and appreciated for their purpose. And then they can take the back seat so that our higher self can drive the car, the spaceship, whatever you're metaphorically riding in, right? And so that was a really important for me to improve that relationship with anger. And I love my anger. I love that fierceness. Anger is such a great emotion of change. It's a catalyst for change. It helps show us where we're not willing to drop our standards in life, where we're not willing to tolerate certain things anymore, helps us draw our lines of our boundaries, helps us get more clear in our communication when we deal with the anger first. And so it's become this really intimate relationship with anger that I actually enjoy. And I know I have this deep level of fierceness too for that warrior archetype if I ever need it. And so that's channeling that energy into something constructive, and that's alchemy. And we're all alchemists. We all have the capability to do that when we transmute that energy into something constructive. It's the same thing with sadness and sorrow and grief and loss, right? Why do you think there's so many beautiful, heartbreaking love songs written? Because those musicians were able to feel the depths of that grief, of that loss, of that sadness, and transmute it into a beautiful poetic song, that then everyone can enjoy and relate to. And so every emotion has that potential if we allow it and we access that ability of alchemizing those energies.
That's beautiful. I mean, it in a way, it's like saying, life is here to be lived and felt and experienced in its full richness. Yet we're constantly damping it down with all of this kind of other stuff that we're consuming or getting hooked on. And actually, we need to just break out of that and feel it and let it tell us what it needs to tell us about ourselves, about our world. And then when that's told us the lesson we need to learn, then we go on living and thriving and shining.
Yep. Otherwise, it just keeps showing up again.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we keep getting triggered or poked by different people, different scenarios until we go to the source of it. And that's why I continue to take my inner peace process, my journey, because that's the medicine for me. I still take that because I'm more inspired now than ever. Every time I look at my daughter, it was literally like me having to develop this process to move through and heal my abandonment wound from losing my mom at a young age, and that so many people can relate to this. I'm sure, the loss of a loved one, a mom, father early on, that then keeps showing up in my relationships. It was like I would fall in love, my amazing college sweetheart. And then what happens? She ends up leaving me, right? To recreate that same story because there was a 4-year-old there that was believing that I wasn't worthy of keeping my lover around, the one I love around. And so that kept showing up again and again until I took it through this process, went to the source of it, alchemized that, and then was able to get super clear on calling in my queen. And since then, that's the beautiful part, is on the other end of that alchemy, that inner peace process, is a lot of dreams come true. It's like releasing the blocks that are in the way of love. We already are love. So it gets really exciting when you release these inner blocks, these subconscious limiting beliefs that are at the root, these younger versions of ourselves that are still stuck in these, problems. We get to rescue them through this process, alchemize that energy in our body, and then watch as your reality shifts and things just show up in your experience, and it gets really exciting. And so it's been a lot of fun getting to share this with those that I work with, because the results are across the board, from a lot of real estate agents that work with me because they're on the roller coaster ride financially and it's stressing them out. And then they release some blocks around unworthiness that they developed early on in life. And all of a sudden now they're like the top in their, division regionally, and like the youngest kicking butt in their real estate company, and everything's more sustainable and regenerative for them. And then we have those that are in relationships that are in turmoil, and this helps them become more clear on their North Star and in their communication. And by doing that inner work, it's easier for them to show up with more presence for their relationship. And that has huge effects on the level of intimacy that's available and the level of pleasure and sex magic and all the good stuff in life.
I mean, you mentioned early on, it can open you up to opportunities because you're, you're no longer kind of linkered by all this rubbish, but you're kind of just aware now, much more aware of, I guess, not just your own potential, but all the things that are available to you in the world that you may not have been kind of tuned into before.
Absolutely.
In terms of the kind of work you do, if people want to find out more about, the stuff you do, how to learn from you, how to kind of get some of this for themselves, where can they go? What's the best place for them to find out about you?
So my website's currently getting upgraded and updated, and that's charlesclay.coach. And we still have the laser focus method up on there. That's an online program, low hanging fruit to really get people started on creating more than they consume and getting all the benefits of that. And then for if anyone's interested in the inner peace process, I do one-on-one work with that. And I also just started, we're 3 weeks into our Freedom from Pain group training. And this is a lot of fun. It's right. Healing can be fun. It's not meant to be this rigorous, shadow work that is the worst thing ever. It's there's a lot of rewards and liberation on the other end. And it's this beautiful 6-week journey that involves a lot of these self-healing practices to get to the root of why you're experiencing physical pain, emotional pain, and how to resolve that for yourself so that you can come back to your natural state of inner peace and just honor anything and learn from it, whatever gets in the way of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. There's so
Absolutely.
much about just turning into all the things that we're afraid to face up to, and how empowering that is, and how that can really shift life being kind of something that happens to us into something that happens for us, so
yes, and through us.
Yeah, and through us as well. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's brilliant. I will leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been truly a pleasure. And for those that are on Instagram, we can connect there. I got my account back, happy ending, which I probably wouldn't have had I dealt with that in the anger emotion. It would have been a different outcome. And that's charlesclay.coach. Super simple. And if anyone resonates with that, want to dive deeper into it, feel free to shoot me a DM with Freedom from Pain, Inner Peace Coach, or Laser Focus Method. And I love to connect. So I like diving deeper and sharing more of these gems.
Well, I'll put all of these links in the show notes as well. So if anyone needs a recap of any of this, they can go to my website, or I'll put it on Instagram or wherever they get their podcasts. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Truly a pleasure and quite an honor, Chris. I appreciate you and everything that you do as well.
And likewise, I've got so much out of this. So I'm really, really grateful for your time.
All right. Take care.
So there we go. That was the empowering Charles Clay, telling us to get out there and give our energy and our gifts to the world so that we can finally be who we came here to be. Find out more about Charles at his site www.charlesclay.coach, and of course his Instagram, where he is charlesclay.coach. That's at charlesclay.coach. These links I'll also be putting in the show notes, so check that out wherever you get your podcasts. You can find this and other episodes at conversationsonliving.com, and don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. And next week I'll be chatting with the inspiring Nick Childs, and we'll be doing a deep dive into knowing what you want, choosing a life plan, facing up to life and its challenges, and going into the day with courage. This week I'm letting the theme music run through its entirety. For those of you who've been asking to hear the whole thing, it's a lovely piece of music and I love it. I can't get enough of it. Always find it very, very soothing. Alright, so until the next episode, have a lovely day.